Ricardo Wilson came home unannounced. Nobody expected him back from London for another 3 days. The mansion was silent, the same suffocating silence that had haunted every room for 18 months. But then he heard something that made his blood run cold. Sounds, coming from somewhere deep inside the house. His heart started pounding. He didn't understand what it was. He moved toward it, following the noise, his hands trembling uncontrollably. It was coming from the kitchen. He pushed open the heavy door slowly, and what he saw stopped his heart completely. Ricardo Wilson was a billionaire. Real estate development, self-made from nothing. He transformed vacant lots into luxury residential towers worth hundreds of millions. Everything he touched turned to gold. But money couldn't bring back what he'd lost. His wife, Elena, died in a devastating accident. Westchester County. A head-on collision on a rainy night. She was gone before the ambulance arrived. Ricardo was in Singapore finalizing a $300 million international deal when he got the call. At her funeral, something broke inside his 3 sons. John, Luca, and Joseph. 5 years old, identical triplets, bright blonde hair, matching blue eyes. They stopped talking. All 3. At the same time. John used to tell elaborate stories about superhero adventures. Luca asked endless questions about how everything worked. Joseph sang Disney songs at the top of his lungs. Now nothing. Silence. 18 months of complete, absolute silence. No words, no laughter, no crying out loud. Just 3 little boys holding each other's hands constantly, staring at nothing like traumatized ghosts. Ricardo spent millions trying to fix it. Child psychologists from the most prestigious hospitals, specialists from Europe, therapy after therapy after therapy. He took them to theme parks, to the mountains, to the beach. He bought them every toy imaginable, hired private tutors, built them an elaborate treehouse with slides and swings. Nothing worked. The boys stayed locked inside themselves, silent together, like they'd made an unspoken pact with their grief. So Ricardo did what broken, desperate men do. He ran. He buried himself completely in work. 80-hour weeks, business trips every other week, Dubai, Tokyo, London, New York. Because sitting in that massive house felt like drowning. His estate in Westchester had 12 bedrooms, an infinity pool overlooking the Hudson, a tennis court, a private gym, a home theater, but it was the loneliest, emptiest place on earth. One evening, Martha, the head housekeeper who'd been with the family for 15 years, approached him in his study. "Mr. Wilson, I can't manage this alone anymore. The house is too big. The boys need more help than I can give them. May I hire someone?" Ricardo barely looked up from his laptop. "Hire whoever you need, Martha. Just handle it." 3 days later, Kate walked through the front door. Mid-20s, warm brown skin, bright expressive eyes, a cheerful yellow bow in her dark hair. She wore a simple navy blue dress with a crisp white apron. She'd lost her own mother young and was helping raise her younger siblings. She understood grief intimately. She knew what it felt like to keep breathing when your heart was completely broken. Ricardo saw Kate once in the hallway. She was carrying cleaning supplies to the laundry room. She nodded respectfully. He didn't even acknowledge her, barely registered her presence. But his sons noticed immediately. Kate didn't try to fix them. She didn't force them to talk or smile or engage. She just showed up every single day, folding laundry, humming soft melodies while she worked, organizing their toys, cleaning their rooms, simply being present. And slowly, week by week, the boys started coming closer. Before we get deep into the story, please let me know where you're watching from. Hit subscribe if you're hooked in and ready to enjoy the story, because tomorrow I have another beautiful story to share with you and I don't want you to miss it for anything. Now let's get into the story. Ricardo Wilson's world ended on a Tuesday night in October. Elena was driving home from her book club meeting when a pickup truck crossed the center line on Route 22. The impact was instantaneous. The state trooper who knocked on Ricardo's door at 2 a.m. in Singapore said she didn't suffer. As if that made it better. As if knowing she died instantly could somehow fill the gaping hole her absence left behind. The funeral was held on a gray Saturday morning. The church was packed with people. Colleagues, friends, family members Ricardo barely recognized through his grief. But it was his sons he couldn't stop watching. John, Luca, and Joseph stood at the front in matching black suits, holding hands so tightly their knuckles turned white. They didn't cry. They didn't speak. They just stood there, staring at their mother's casket with hollow, empty eyes. After the burial, something fundamental broke inside all three of them. The boys who used to race through the house screaming with laughter, who wrestled on the living room floor, who asked 1,000 questions a day, they vanished. In their place were three silent ghosts who moved through the mansion hand in hand, staring at nothing. John stopped telling his elaborate superhero stories. Luca stopped asking why the sky was blue and how airplanes stayed up. Joseph stopped singing in the bathtub. The silence was deafening. Ricardo threw money at the problem the way he'd solved every other crisis in his life. The best child psychologists in New York. Specialists flown in from London and Switzerland. Occupational therapy, play therapy, art therapy, music therapy. Disneyland. The Grand Canyon. A month in Montana at a dude ranch. He bought them puppies, built them an elaborate treehouse, filled their rooms with every toy imaginable. Nothing worked. The boys remained locked in their grief, silent together, unreachable. So Ricardo did the only thing that made sense to his broken mind. He ran. He buried himself in work, 16-hour days, then 18, then 20. Business trips to Singapore, Dubai, Tokyo, London. He closed deals worth hundreds of millions while his sons stopped living. Because being present meant facing what he'd lost, and Ricardo Wilson didn't know how to face that kind of pain. The mansion became a beautiful tomb. 12 bedrooms, an infinity pool, a tennis court, a home theater, and the loneliest silence Ricardo had ever known. Martha cornered Ricardo in his study one evening, her weathered face etched with exhaustion. "Mr. Wilson, I can't do this alone anymore. The house is too big. The boys need more attention than I can give them. I need to hire help." Ricardo signed the approval without looking up from his laptop. "Do whatever you need, Martha. Just handle it." 3 days later, Kate arrived. 25 years old with warm brown skin, bright eyes that seemed to see everything, and a cheerful yellow bow pinning back her dark hair. She wore a navy dress with a white apron, practical but neat. Martha explained that Kate had lost her mother at 15 and helped raise her 3 younger siblings while working her way through community college. She understood grief in a way no therapist with fancy degrees ever could. Ricardo saw her once that first week, passing in the hallway while she carried fresh linens upstairs. She smiled and nodded politely. He looked right through her. But John, Luca, and Joseph noticed her immediately. Kate didn't do what all the expensive specialists had done. She didn't try to coax words out of them or bribe them with rewards for speaking. She didn't use charts or sticker systems or therapeutic techniques. She just showed up. Every single morning at 8 o'clock, she'd arrive and move through the house with quiet purpose. Folding laundry, organizing toys, humming old lullabies her mother used to sing. The first week, the boys watched her from doorways, suspicious and silent. The second week, John sat on the floor nearby while she sorted clothes, just listening to her hum. The third week, Luca left a crayon drawing on the folded towels, a crooked yellow sun. Kate taped it to the wall like it was a masterpiece. By week 4, John whispered his first word in 18 months. "Kate." Just her name, barely audible, but she heard it. She smiled gently and kept folding. By week 5, all 3 boys were following her around, sitting close while she worked. By week 6, the house was filled with sound again. Children's laughter, off-key singing, the thunder of small feet racing down hallways. But Ricardo was in London, then Dubai, then Tokyo. He had no idea his sons were coming back to life. He was never home long enough to notice the miracle happening in his own house. Ricardo was in London closing a deal worth £150 million when something inexplicable happened. He was sitting in a conference room overlooking the Thames, and suddenly he couldn't breathe. He needed to go home. No. He didn't call ahead. Just booked the next flight and left his business partners staring after him in confusion. He arrived at the mansion just after noon, 3 days early. The house was quiet as he pushed through the front door, briefcase in hand. He expected the usual suffocating silence. But then he heard something that made his heart stop. Laughter. Children's laughter. It couldn't be. His sons hadn't made a sound in 18 months. Ricardo moved quickly through the hallway, following the noise to the kitchen. He pushed the door open slowly, and the scene before him felt like a dream. Sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Joseph was perched on Kate's shoulders, his small hands tangled in her hair, giggling uncontrollably. John and Luca sat barefoot on the kitchen counter by the sink, legs swinging freely, faces glowing with pure joy. All 3 were singing, actually singing, "You Are My Sunshine" at the top of their lungs. Kate was folding small bright shirts, humming along with them. Smiling like this was the most natural thing in the world. The boys wore matching blue t-shirts. Their hair was messy, their cheeks flushed with happiness. They looked alive. For exactly 3 seconds, Ricardo felt overwhelming relief wash over him. His sons were talking, laughing, singing. Thank God. Thank God. Then something dark and toxic rose up inside him. This woman, this stranger, had done what he couldn't. While he was building empires, she was here healing his children. She'd accomplished in 6 weeks what millions of dollars couldn't fix. And he hated her for it. What the hell is going on here? His voice exploded across the kitchen like a gunshot. The singing stopped instantly. Joseph's face crumpled. Kate stumbled, carefully lifting the boy off her shoulders. John and Luca froze on the counter, their swinging legs stopping mid-motion. "Mr. Wilson, I was just—" "This is completely inappropriate." Ricardo's voice shook with rage. "You were hired to clean, not to turn my kitchen into a circus. Putting my sons on counters? What if one of them fell?" "Nothing happened, sir. I was being careful." "You're fired. Pack your things. Leave now." Kate stood there for a moment, her eyes filling with tears. But she didn't argue. She just nodded with quiet dignity. "Yes, sir." She walked past him with her head high, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. The boys climbed down from the counter slowly, holding each other's hands. Their faces went completely blank, like someone had flipped a switch. They looked at their father with something Ricardo had never seen before. Fear. Then they turned and walked out, bare feet padding softly against the floor. The house fell silent again. Ricardo stood alone in the sunny kitchen, and the weight of what he'd just done crashed over him like a wave. He'd destroyed everything. Ricardo sat in his study that evening, a glass of scotch untouched in his hand. The silence pressed in from every corner of the house, suffocating him. There was a knock at the door. Martha entered without waiting for permission, and the look on her face made his stomach drop. "They were talking, Mr. Wilson." Her voice was quiet but sharp as a blade. "I know. I saw them today." "No." Martha shook her head. "You don't understand. They've been talking for 6 weeks. Full sentences. Stories. Songs. Kate brought them back little by little every single day. The glass slipped from Ricardo's hand, tipping over on the mahogany desk. Scotch spilled across the wood. He didn't move to clean it. 6 weeks, he whispered. How did I not know? You were never here to know, Mr. Wilson. Martha's words cut deep. You were in Singapore and Dubai and London while your sons were coming back to life. And today, you destroyed the only good thing that's happened to them since their mother died. She left him sitting there in the dark. Ricardo stared at the framed photo on his shelf, Elena laughing, the boys as babies wrapped in her arms. What have I done? He whispered to the empty room. Later that night, he couldn't sleep. He stood in the hallway outside the boys' bedroom, and then he heard it, whispers. His heart stopped. He moved closer, pressing his ear to the door. Do you think she's coming back? John's voice, so small. I don't know. Luca. Maybe we made her too sad. Joseph. Silence. We didn't make her sad. John's voice cracked. Daddy did. The words hit Ricardo like a physical blow. I miss her. John started crying softly. I miss her so much. Me too. Me too. Ricardo slid down the wall and sat on the floor, his head in his hands. His sons were talking, but not to him. They were grieving for someone who'd loved them better than he had. Someone they trusted more. Someone who'd shown up when he ran away. He pulled out his phone, staring at the screen. He could call anyone, fix any problem with money or connections. But this couldn't be bought or negotiated or controlled. He finally understood. He couldn't fix this alone. He needed Kate. Not because she was convenient or good at her job. Because his sons needed her. And maybe, just maybe, he did too. Ricardo showed up at Kate's address the next morning. A modest apartment building in a working-class neighborhood. Cracked sidewalk, faded paint, a world away from his Westchester estate. He climbed to the 3rd floor and knocked. A teenage boy opened the door, tall and guarded, looking Ricardo up and down with hostile eyes. I'm looking for Kate. Does she live here? Who's asking? My name is Ricardo Wilson. I was her employer. I need to speak with her. The boy's jaw tightened. You're the guy who fired her. You made her cry, man. You embarrassed her in front of little kids. The door slammed in his face. Ricardo tried again the next day at another address Martha had given him. Kate's sister's place across town. A woman in her 40s answered, a baby on her hip, exhaustion written across her face. You're the rich guy who yelled at her, she said coldly. Yes. I need to talk to her. To apologize. The woman called over her shoulder. Kate, there's someone here for you. Footsteps. Then Kate appeared, her face going still when she saw him. What do you want, Mr. Wilson? To talk. Please. There's nothing to talk about. Kate, I know what I did was wrong. But my sons, they haven't spoken since you left. They're back in that silence. That's not my responsibility. Ricardo reached into his jacket with trembling hands and pulled out a small cardboard box. The boys made this. Martha found it hidden in their playroom. Kate took it hesitantly. Inside were 3 drawings, a yellow butterfly, a rainbow, a heart with stick figures holding hands. Beneath them, a folded paper with words written in crayon. Please come back. We love you. Kate's hand went to her mouth. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm not asking you to forgive me, Ricardo said quietly, his voice breaking. I'm asking you to save them. Because I can't. Kate clutched the box to her chest. What you did hurt. You made them feel like loving me was wrong. Like being happy was something to be ashamed of. I know. I was angry at myself, not you. I saw them alive again and realized a stranger had done what their father couldn't. Kate looked down at the drawings. If I come back, and I mean if things change completely. No more 80-hour weeks. No more running. You have to be part of their healing. Anything. 1 week, she said firmly. Prove you mean it. Ricardo canceled his Tokyo trip that afternoon. His assistant called 3 times, increasingly frantic about the $400 million deal hanging in the balance. He ignored every call. For the first time in 18 months, he stayed home. He made breakfast the next morning. Burned toast and scrambled eggs that were too dry. The boys sat at the kitchen table, picking at their food silently, but they didn't leave. That felt like something. He read to them that afternoon, sitting on the playroom floor with a book about space. They sat on the couch, watching him, not smiling, not speaking, but listening. At bedtime, he kissed each of them good night. I love you, he whispered. They didn't say it back. But John squeezed his hand once. On the 4th day, Ricardo found Joseph sitting alone by the laundry room, clutching a small piece of fabric, one of the blue shirts he'd been wearing the day Kate left. Joseph pressed it to his face, and his small shoulders shook with silent sobs. Ricardo knelt beside him. Do you want Kate to come back? Joseph nodded without looking up. I'm trying, buddy. I'm trying so hard. Joseph finally looked at him with hollow, red-rimmed eyes. And Ricardo saw it clearly. His son didn't believe him. That night, Ricardo stood outside their bedroom door again and heard the whispers. Do you think she's coming back? John's voice. Daddy said he's trying, Joseph offered weakly. But he said that before, Luca said. He said he'd be home more. He said lots of things. Ricardo's hand gripped the doorframe. I miss her, John whispered, his voice breaking. The next morning, day 5, not the promised 7, Ricardo drove back to Kate's sister's apartment. He couldn't wait. When Kate opened the door, her eyes widened in surprise. It hasn't been a week. I know. But I heard them last night. They're talking to each other but not to me. They don't trust me, Kate. His voice cracked. They were crying for you, asking if you were coming back. And I realized, I can't do this. I can't reach them. I need you to teach me how to be the father they deserve. Kate studied his face, searching for sincerity. Please, Ricardo whispered. I'm not asking as your employer. I'm asking as a man who's lost everything that matters. Kate's eyes glistened. Finally, she exhaled slowly. I'll come back. But not today. Give me 2 more days. And you need to tell the boys yourself. They need to know you fought for this. Ricardo found the boys in the playroom, sitting together in their usual circle, holding hands. He knelt down in front of them, his heart pounding. I have something to tell you. 3 pairs of blue eyes looked up. I went to see Kate today. And she's coming back. John's eyes widened. Really? Ricardo's chest tightened. It was the first time John had spoken directly to him in weeks. Yes, buddy. In 2 days she'll be here. And this time I'm going to make sure she stays. Because I'm staying too. For the first time in days, he saw something flicker in their faces. Not quite belief, but maybe. Possibility. The next 2 days felt endless. Ricardo stayed home, made meals, read stories, sat with them even when they didn't respond. But he could see it in their eyes. They were waiting, holding their breath, afraid to hope. On the morning Kate was due to arrive, Ricardo woke early and made pancakes with chocolate chip smiley faces the way Elena used to. The boys came downstairs in their matching pajamas, still holding hands. Eat up, he said gently. We have a special day today. At noon, they heard the doorbell. All 3 boys ran to the front window, pressing their faces against the glass. Martha opened the door, and there was Kate, yellow bow in her hair, that warm smile on her face. "Kate!" Joseph shouted. All three of them bolted for the door. They crashed into her so hard she stumbled backward, but she caught them, wrapping her arms around all three. "We thought you were gone forever," John cried. "We missed you so much," Luca sobbed. "Daddy said you were coming, but we were scared you wouldn't." Joseph's words tumbled out. Kate sank to her knees, pulling them closer, tears streaming down her face. "I'm here, babies. I'm here. I missed you every single day. Are you staying?" John pulled back, his face wet. "You're not leaving again?" Kate looked up. Her eyes met Ricardo's across the foyer. He nodded, tears on his own cheeks. "I'm staying," she promised. "I'm not going anywhere." Kate gently turned the boys toward Ricardo. "Your daddy fought very hard to bring me back. He didn't give up." The boys looked at him with new eyes. Then, slowly, they reached for him. Ricardo dropped to his knees and pulled them close, holding them as they all cried together. Not just from grief this time, but from gratitude and relief and hope. Kate placed her hand on his shoulder. "We'll get through this together." That evening, the house felt different. Not empty. Not silent. The kitchen filled with laughter as Kate and the boys made dinner together, singing off-key while they stirred. Ricardo stood in the doorway watching, and for the first time in 2 years, he felt peace. 6 months passed like seasons changing. Slowly, then suddenly everything was different. Ricardo restructured his entire life. He worked from home 3 days a week now. His office door always open so the boys could wander in. No more international trips during school weeks. No more 80-hour marathons. He was there for breakfast every morning, even if the pancakes were still slightly burned. He was there for dinner every night. 4 bedtime stories and bad dreams and scraped knees and everything in between. Slowly, painfully slowly, his sons began to trust him again. They started coming to him with their drawings, their questions, their small victories and defeats. John showed him a story he'd written at school. Luca asked him to help build a Lego spaceship. Joseph crawled into his lap during movie night and fell asleep there. Kate became Auntie Kate somewhere along the way. She ate dinner with them every evening, celebrated birthdays, helped with homework, and tucked them in at night. She was family now in every way that mattered. Ricardo learned from her in ways he never expected. He learned how to listen without immediately trying to fix everything. How to be present in the moment without thinking 3 steps ahead. How to sit in silence without it feeling like failure. How to comfort without having all the answers. How to love without conditions or expectations. The mansion transformed. It wasn't a mausoleum anymore. It was a home, filled with the boys' laughter echoing through the halls, art projects covering the refrigerator, toys scattered across the living room floor, the smell of Kate's cooking filling the kitchen. One evening at dinner, Joseph looked up from his spaghetti with serious eyes. "Daddy, do you miss Mommy?" The table went quiet. Kate looked at Ricardo, giving him space to answer. Ricardo took a breath. "Every day, buddy. I miss her every single day." "Me too," Joseph said quietly. "Me too," echoed John. "Me too," whispered Luca. Ricardo felt his throat tighten. "You know what I think. I think Mommy would be really proud of you guys. Of how brave you've been. How strong." Joseph tilted his head. "She'd be proud of you too, Daddy." Ricardo's eyes burned with tears. Kate reached over and squeezed his hand under the table. The boys smiled at him, real, genuine smiles. And Ricardo understood. They weren't healing because the pain was gone. They were healing because they'd learned to carry it together. Because they'd stopped running from it and started holding each other through it. Because love, real, patient, steadfast love, was teaching them how to live again. On a golden Saturday evening in late spring, Ricardo finished reviewing some contracts in his home office. Just a few hours on the weekend now, nothing like before. He closed his laptop and went looking for his family. He found them in the garden, on their knees in the rich soil, hands covered in dirt, planting something. Laughter floated through the warm air as the late afternoon sun painted everything gold. Ricardo walked over, his heart full. "What are we planting?" Joseph looked up, dirt smudged across his cheek, his face bright with joy. "Sunflowers, Daddy." "Sunflowers." John nodded, carefully pressing seeds into the earth with his small fingers. "Auntie Kate said Mommy loved them." Ricardo knelt beside them, his throat suddenly tight. She did. She loved them very much. Luca looked up at him with those blue eyes so much like Elena's. "Why did she love them, Daddy?" Ricardo glanced at Kate. She smiled gently, encouragingly. He turned back to his sons. "Your mom used to say that sunflowers always turn toward the light. No matter how dark it gets, no matter how cloudy the day, they keep reaching for the sun." His voice grew softer. "She said that's how we're supposed to live our lives. Always turning toward the light. Like us," John said quietly, understanding dawning on his face. Ricardo's eyes burned. "Yeah, buddy. Exactly like us." "Daddy, look." Joseph pointed suddenly at the sky. A yellow butterfly had landed delicately on one of the seed packets beside them. The boys went completely still, watching it with wide eyes. Its wings opened and closed slowly, beautifully, catching the golden light. "That's Mommy," Joseph whispered, his voice full of wonder. "Isn't it?" Kate's voice was gentle. "Yes, sweet boy. That's her. Watching over you. So proud of how brave you've become." The butterfly lifted gracefully into the air, circled once above their heads, then flew toward the sunset, a flash of yellow against the pink and orange sky. John took Ricardo's hand, his small fingers squeezing tight. "Daddy, are you staying? Really staying?" Ricardo pulled all three boys close, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm staying, buddy. I promise. I'm not going anywhere." "Ever?" Luca asked. "Ever?" Joseph leaned his head against Ricardo's chest, leaving dirt prints on his shirt. "I'm glad Auntie Kate came back." Ricardo looked at Kate over his sons' heads. She was wiping tears from her eyes, leaving a smudge of dirt on her cheek. "Me too, sweetheart," Ricardo said, his voice breaking. "Me too." The sun disappeared slowly behind the horizon. The garden filled with soft golden light, the kind that makes everything feel sacred and possible. And for the first time since Elena died, Ricardo Wilson felt whole. Not because everything was fixed or perfect. Not because the pain was gone. But because he was finally exactly where he was supposed to be. Present, grateful, home. John looked up at the darkening sky. "The sunflowers will grow, right?" Ricardo kissed the top of his head. "Yes, baby. They'll grow. And when they do, they'll turn toward the light. Just like Mommy said," Luca added. "Just like us," Joseph repeated. "Just like us," Ricardo whispered. And in that sacred moment, surrounded by his sons, standing beside the woman who'd saved them all, Ricardo finally understood what Elena had been trying to teach him all along. True wealth isn't what you build with your hands. It's who you become in your heart. The most valuable thing in this life isn't success or money or power. It's love that stays. Even in the silence. Even in the darkest nights. Love that stays. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Matthew 16 verse 26. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, You will surely enjoy the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as can ever imagine. So do check it out.